At the restaurant table, my wife's son looked straight into my eyes and said, "You're nothing. But my father is different." My wife sat still. I said nothing either. 7 days later, his life collapsed completely, job gone, car repossessed, apartment evicted. That evening, my phone rang continuously with desperate calls from my wife. I turned it off. They would pay the price soon enough. Welcome to today's story. Please like, subscribe, and drop a comment telling us where you're tuning in from. Quick disclaimer, this narrative contains fictional elements created for entertainment and educational value. Any similarity to actual names or locations is coincidental, though the underlying message is completely real. My name is Marcus Sullivan, and I've spent my entire life paying attention to details. I'm 54 years old. I'm a head chef at Riverside Bistro, a family-owned Italian-American restaurant in Boise, Idaho, that's been around since the 80s. The kind of place with red checkered tablecloths, framed photos of the original owners on the wall, and regulars who've been coming in every Thursday night for 20 years. Some of them know my station better than their own living rooms. They know I work the grill on Fridays, that I make the marinara from scratch every Tuesday morning, that I'm the one who decides when the bread gets pulled from the oven. My job is simple on paper: long hours in the kitchen, managing line cooks, creating daily specials, keeping things running smooth. But anyone who's worked a kitchen knows it's never that simple. You're always watching the grill temps the ticket. Times the way a new cook holds a knife, whether someone's showing up late 3 days in a row. You learn to notice things, small things. The difference between a dish that's good and a dish that's perfect is usually something most people would never see. That training shaped everything about how I live. Precision, timing, reliability. Show up every day, do the work, don't make excuses. My life outside the restaurant reflects that too. I drink my coffee black. I keep my truck clean. I pay my bills 2 days early every time, because that's what you do when you're the kind of person people can count on. I'm the guy friends call at 2 in the morning when their car breaks down on the interstate. I'm the one who shows up with jumper cables, a spare tire, and no judgment. That's who I've always been. That's who I thought I'd always be. I never married young. I was too focused on building a career, working my way up from line cook to sous chef to head chef. Relationships came and went, but nothing stuck. I told myself I was fine with that. I had my work. I had my routines. I had a life that made sense. Then 10 months ago, I met Michelle Sullivan at a backyard barbecue thrown by a mutual friend. She was 48, recently divorced, with a 21-year-old son named Connor, from her first marriage to a man named Scott Hendricks. Michelle was warm, funny, easy to talk to. We clicked in a way that felt natural, comfortable. We started seeing each other, and within a few months, things got serious. She moved into my place, a small 2-bedroom house near the Boise River. Nothing fancy, but it was mine. Paid off. Quiet. I liked it that way. Connor came with the package. I understood that. I didn't go into this blind. I knew what it meant to be a stepfather to a young man who already had a father out there somewhere. But I thought I could be a steady presence, a reliable support, someone Connor could count on if he needed it. I wasn't trying to replace Scott. I didn't even know the guy. I was just trying to show up, be present, be the kind of man who doesn't make promises he can't keep. The first few months seemed fine. Connor was polite enough when he came by. He'd stop in for dinner once or twice a week, make small talk about work or the weather, then head back to his apartment on the west side of town. He worked part-time at a warehouse, talked about maybe going back to school someday, maybe getting into a trade. Michelle was proud of him in that way. Mothers are, even when their kids are just treading water. I didn't push. I figured if Connor wanted advice or help, he'd ask. That's how men handle things, right? You don't force it. You wait. You let people come to you. I started noticing small things, though. Little things that didn't add up. Connor's car insurance was under my name. His phone was on my family plan. When he needed help with his apartment lease, I co-signed. When he mentioned needing storage space, I put my name on that contract too. Michelle said it was temporary, just until Connor got on his feet, just until he finished sorting things out. I believed her, because that's what you do when you love someone. You trust them. You help. You carry the weight when they ask you to. I'm not a complicated man. I believe in doing what you say you're going to do. I believe in being there when people need you. I believe in paying your own way and not asking others to carry your weight. Those aren't old-fashioned values. They're just values. And I really thought that living by them would be enough. That showing up, being steady, being reliable would mean something. That it would be respected, appreciated, returned in kind. I thought wrong, because 10 months into this new life, I learned something I should have known from the kitchen. Precision matters, but so does knowing when to stop covering for someone else's mistakes. You can plate a dish perfectly, garnish it just right, send it out with pride. But if the ingredients are rotten underneath, it doesn't matter how good it looks. It doesn't matter how much effort you put in. It's still rotten. A Friday night 3 weeks before that silent moment at Julia Davis Park taught me that lesson in a way I'll never forget. The morning after Olive Garden, I woke up at 5:47 a.m., 3 minutes before my alarm. The kind of sleeplessness that comes when your brain won't stop running the numbers, replaying the silence, calculating what you've lost before you've even admitted you're losing it. I made coffee in the kitchen of the house I'd spent years paying off, a small 2-bedroom near the Boise River. I'd worked double shifts, saved every dollar, and finally paid it off 3 years ago. Paid off. Quiet. Mine. Then Michelle moved in. Then Connor started staying over. Then the weekends became weeks, and my house felt like it belonged to everyone but me. I sat down at the kitchen table and opened the drawer where I kept the bills. Bank statements, insurance paperwork, loan documents, receipts, everything I'd been avoiding because looking meant admitting, and admitting meant doing something about it. I started making a list. Not because I'd decided anything yet, just because I needed to see it, all of it, every dollar, every signature, every promise I'd kept that nobody else had bothered keeping. Connor's car, 2021 Honda Civic. Purchase price $24,000. I'd co-signed the loan because Connor was 21 with no credit history. Just this once, Michelle had said. Monthly payment $420. I wasn't supposed to be making those payments, Connor was, but Connor's paychecks were tight, and there was always some reason why this month he couldn't cover it. So I covered it, for 10 months straight. Car insurance. Connor was on my policy, $100 to $85 a month. Supposed to be temporary. Just until he gets his own policy set up. That was 10 months ago. Phone plan. Family plan through Verizon. $160 a month total. My line, Michelle's line, Connor's line, Connor's portion $40. Had he ever paid it? No. Not once. Storage unit. $95 a month for a 10x10 unit on the south side of Boise, where Connor kept furniture from his old apartment. The unit was in my name because Connor's credit wouldn't qualify. The apartment. Connor had wanted his own place after living with us for 4 months. We helped him find a 1-bedroom in Garden City. Rent $950 a month. The lease required a co-signer. The landlord ran a credit check on me, not Connor. My name was on that lease. When Connor's rent was late twice in 6 months, my credit took the hit. I wrote it all down on a yellow legal pad. Monthly obligations tied to Connor car payment. $420. Car insurance, $185. Phone plan, $40. Storage unit, $95. Apartment cosign, $950, potential liability. Total $1,690 per month. Over 10 months, $17,000. That didn't count groceries, gas money, dinners. That didn't count the nights Michelle had asked me to help Connor out with the promise he'd pay me back. He never did. I sat back and stared at the legal pad. $17,000 I'd poured into a kid who'd looked me in the eye last night and called me a loser. The house was quiet. Michelle was still asleep. Outside, the sun was coming up, that pale winter light that makes everything look colder than it is. I could hear the furnace kick on the refrigerator humming. I thought about the way Connor had said it. Not angry, not defensive, just matter of fact. "You're a loser. My dad isn't." Like it was an observation, like he'd been thinking it for a while and finally decided to say it out loud. And Michelle had said nothing. That's what kept circling back. Not Connor's words, 21-year-olds say stupid things, but Michelle's silence. That was a choice. That was her deciding in real time that it was easier to let me absorb the insult than to defend me. I looked back at the legal pad. The numbers didn't lie. The car was in my name. The insurance had my signature. The phone plan, the storage unit, the apartment lease all tied back to me. If Connor defaulted, all that debt would land on me. Not him. Not Michelle. Me. I'd been so focused on being helpful, on being the stable guy, that I hadn't stopped to ask, what happens when nobody respects the man who's paying for everything? The coffee had gone cold. I poured it out, made a fresh pot, and kept writing. Not obligations this time. Action items. Step 1, pull my credit report. I needed to see if there was anything else I didn't know about. Any other accounts. Any surprises. Step 2, document everything, every payment, every text where Michelle asked me to cover something just this once. Every receipt, every bank statement. If this went south, I needed proof. Step 3, make a decision. Do I keep covering these bills and pretend last night didn't happen? Or do I stop? I didn't have the answer yet. But sitting there in the early morning quiet, watching the sun come up over the Boise foothills, I knew one thing: I couldn't keep doing this. Not like this. Not while being treated like I didn't matter. I thought about my dad. He'd been a line cook for 40 years at a diner in Caldwell. He'd worked 6 days a week, double shifts when he could get them. He'd taught me that work mattered, that showing up mattered, that being reliable was a virtue. But he'd also taught me something else. Self-respect isn't negotiable. My dad would have walked out of that Olive Garden the second Connor opened his mouth. He wouldn't have sat there and taken it. He would have stood up, looked Michelle in the eye and said, "Handle your son." And then he would have left. I'd stayed. I'd absorbed it. I'd paid the bill. And now, sitting at my kitchen table with a legal pad full of numbers that proved I'd been funding my own humiliation, I realized my silence had been just as damaging as Michelle's. The bedroom door opened. Michelle came out in her bathrobe, eyes puffy. She looked at me sitting at the table with the legal pad and the pile of bills, and her face tightened. "What are you doing?" she asked. "Inventory," I said. She didn't ask what I meant. She just filled a coffee cup and went back to the bedroom, closing the door softly behind her. She already knew. She'd always known. She just hadn't cared enough to stop it. I looked down at the legal pad one more time. $17,000, 10 months, one word: loser. Enough. The important papers drawer, I hadn't touched it in months. Because I trusted. Because I didn't want to seem controlling. Because I thought generosity was love. Saturday night. Michelle was asleep, or pretending to be. The house was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional creak of settling wood. I sat at the kitchen table and pulled everything out, one document at a time, laying them flat like evidence at a crime scene. The 2021 Honda Civic title. My name clean and clear in black ink. Value $24,000. Monthly payment $420. Insurance $185 a month. I stared at that paper longer than I should have, feeling the weight of what it meant. I'd co-signed because Michelle said Connor needed reliable transportation for work. Just until he gets on his feet, she'd said. That had been 8 months ago. The car still had my name on it. The payments still came out of my account. And now it felt heavy knowing it belonged to someone who'd called me a loser. The phone plan printout. Family account $160 a month total. Connor's line was $40 of that. Every month, regular as clockwork, I paid for the phone he used to ignore me. The storage unit contract. 10 by 10 space, $95 a month, my signature at the bottom. Storing Connor's things while Connor couldn't seem to find room for gratitude. The apartment lease addendum. Connor's place, $950 a month. My name listed as co-signer, the term jointly and severally liable printed in fine text. That phrase stung, now liable for someone who had no sense of liability himself. I did the math with the same brain that automatically calculates food costs in the kitchen. Minimum $1,650 a month, close to $20,000 a year. For someone who'd called me a loser over breadsticks and marinara. I could see the pattern now clear as day. A pattern of sheltering, soothing, absorbing harm. Erosion by 1,000 monthly withdrawals, each one small enough to ignore. All of them together devastating. I sat there with the papers spread out like a diagnosis. The house was silent. My hands were steady. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like a loser. I felt like a man who'd taken enough. Sleep didn't come easy that night. But when morning arrived, I texted George, "Coffee tomorrow morning, need advice." The reply came fast. Awaken, 9 a.m. Sunday morning, I drove downtown to Awaken Coffee. Local chain, good coffee, busy, but not chaotic on a Sunday. I arrived early, ordered a black coffee, took a corner table near the window where the light came in clean. The place smelled like espresso and cinnamon rolls. Normal Sunday morning in Boise. Everyone moving through their lives while mine felt like it was coming apart at the seams. George Dalton walked in at exactly 9. 62 years old, retired highway construction worker, union, his whole life, white hair, cut military, short hands like weathered leather. He'd worked with my father years back, became a family friend, the kind of man I trusted when I needed straight answers. George grabbed his coffee cream, 2 sugars, and sat down heavy. Looked at me for a long moment. "You look like hell." "Feel better than I look," I said. George raised an eyebrow. "That's new." I told him about the dinner, Connor casually mentioning Scott, the comment about Mom settling, the word loser landing like a slap. George listened without interrupting, fingers wrapped around his ceramic mug. I described Michelle's face, the way she stared at her water glass, how her silence felt like a choice. When I finished, George nodded once, sipped his coffee. Let the silence settle. You know why it hurt so bad. George finally said. I thought I knew. But George's next words came from a different angle. Because you helped teach him he could say it. That landed heavy. I started to protest, but George held up a hand. I'm not saying you deserved it. I'm saying you've been covering for him so long he thinks disrespect doesn't come with a bill. And Michelle. She's watched you take it. Her silence isn't protection, it's permission. I sat back. So what am I supposed to do? Stop covering, George said simply. Let him face what he's built. Or what he hasn't built in this case. George shared a story about his own son. Years ago, kid had gotten into trouble and George had to make a choice. Keep bailing him out or let him face consequences. Hardest thing I ever did, George said, was watch my boy struggle. But it worked. He learned. Sometimes the best gift you can give someone is letting them fall. You're not punishing Connor, George continued. You're ending the cover-up. There's a big difference between being cruel and refusing to let someone be comfortable while they disrespect you. I asked. What about Michelle? George shrugged. She'll have to decide if silence is loyalty or cowardice. You can't make that choice for her, but you can stop making it easy for her to choose wrong. He finished his coffee. You've spent years being the quiet one, the reliable one. But silence can teach people the wrong lessons. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do is let someone face the truth. Something settled in my chest. Not anger, not revenge, just clarity. George stood up, clapped a hand on my shoulder, squeezed once. You'll figure it out. I left Awaken Coffee with a clear head. The cold air hit my face as I walked to my truck, and for the first time in days, I felt like I could breathe. Sunday afternoon, I sat at my kitchen table again, but this time I wasn't looking at old papers. I was making a new list. Not a revenge list, a process list. Items I needed to handle, phone calls I needed to make, boundaries I needed to set. Monday morning, I started with that list. Chef's rule: prep thoroughly, then execute. I sat at the kitchen table with legal papers and my laptop spread out in front of me. Made a detailed checklist: account numbers, customer service numbers, dates, policy numbers, what required notice, what required signatures, what was mine to decide. I'd learned in kitchens that you never rush into service unprepared. Same principle applied here. Call One Auto Insurance, the company I'd been with for over 15 years. The woman on the line recognized my name. I'd never missed a payment, never filed a claim. I need to remove a vehicle from my policy effective next billing cycle. I need written confirmation sent via email. She confirmed 2021 Honda Civic. That vehicle is currently driven by my stepson, I explained. I'll be notifying him separately. She was professional, all business. You're well within your rights, Mr. Sullivan. I'll process this immediately. That phrase felt like a small hand on my shoulder, an affirmation I hadn't known I needed. Within your rights, like permission to stop being the one who always gave in. Call to phone company, same process. Terminating Connor's line. Got the exact cutoff time so no one could claim they were blindsided. Service ends January 28th at 11:59 p.m. The rep noted it in the system, asked if I wanted to downgrade the family plan. Yes, I said. Just my line and my wife's. 2 lines instead of 3. The savings would be small, but that wasn't the point. Call 3 storage unit. Drove there in person because some things need to be handled face to face. The manager was a young guy with tired eyes who'd seen this before. I showed my ID and contract. I need to schedule a supervised access window for the secondary user. After that, I want to change the lock code. The manager nodded without judgment. This happens all the time. When do you want to schedule it? We set Wednesday afternoon 2-hour window. He printed a confirmation. I folded it into my wallet. Call 4 apartment management office. I called, explained I was the co-signer needing to remove my name per the contract terms. The woman was professional but firm. He'll need to demonstrate financial capacity himself or provide a new guarantor within 30 days. We'll issue written notice to both parties. She emailed forms. I printed them, immediately filed everything in a folder labeled Connor Financial Separation. Just seeing those words in my own handwriting felt like progress. By mid-afternoon, all the cutoffs were in motion. Everything documented, everything with proper notice. No one could say I'd acted rashly or unfairly. I sent Connor a text. Starting next month, I won't be covering car insurance or phone plan. Here are the exact dates and times so you can transfer things over yourself. This isn't an argument, just advance notice. Sent Michelle a text, copying her, I'm setting financial boundaries. This isn't about control. It's about respect. Hit send on that last message. Took a deep breath. Stared at my phone. It buzzed almost immediately. Connor's call came in hot. What the hell is this? Voice already pitched high accusatory. My insurance just sent me an email. I kept my voice calm. I said there'd be advance notice. You're screwing me over, Connor yelled. You know I need the car for work. You need insurance to drive it, I said evenly. That part's not my responsibility anymore. You're doing this to punish me. Connor's voice shifted to a roar loud enough that I pulled the phone away from my ear. I leaned back in my chair, stared at a scuff mark on the kitchen wall, breathed in through my nose. I'm doing this because I'm done paying for things when all I get back is disrespect. A beat of silence. Then Connor laughed a cold, bitter, skeptical sound. Wow, so you're really going to go there? No, I said quietly. You went there when you called me a loser. Connor swore called me something worse and hung up. A hard slam of disconnection that left my ear ringing. An hour later, Michelle came home early from work, confronted me in the kitchen before she'd even taken off her coat. Connor called me crying Marcus. Did he mention what he said to me at Olive Garden? I asked. She looked away, wouldn't meet my eyes. You know how he gets when he's under pressure. So do I said. I just don't get to use it as an excuse. Her voice rose desperate. You're panicking him. And I kept my voice low measured. He's 21, Michelle. He's my son. And I'm your husband, I said. But apparently that doesn't mean much. She flinched, turned away, went to the bedroom and closed the door. That night and the days that followed, Connor sent a barrage of texts. Boss says I'm late again because I don't have a car. Storage place says I have 2 days to clear my stuff. Are you happy now? I read them, didn't respond, but I noticed something between those desperate messages. Connor was on his phone constantly. Actual calls, long conversations. Voice low and tense when I caught glimpses through doorways. I wondered who was he talking to so much. Wednesday arrived. The car got a bright orange notice slapped under the wiper, no valid insurance vehicle subject to impound. By evening, it was legally towed from the street. Connor called screaming. I didn't answer. Thursday morning, Connor showed up at the house, angry, sleep-deprived eyes red. I can't get to work. I just lost my job. I calmly poured coffee. Storage place has a bus line nearby if you need to get your stuff. Connor looked at me like I was a stranger. You're really doing this? I'm not doing anything, I said. You're facing what happens when I'm not covering for you. That's all. Michelle tried to mediate weakly from the doorway. Can't you just... 1 more month? No. Friday afternoon at Riverside Bistro during prep for the dinner shift. My phone buzzed while I was prepping ingredients. Email notification. Idaho Central Credit Union. The subject line made my stomach drop. Important account activity notice action required. I stepped into the back office, away from the heat and noise of the kitchen, and opened that email on my phone. The first line made my hands go cold. We're contacting you regarding recent activity on an account in your name. By the time I got home that night, a certified letter was waiting. The certified letter had my name on it. Inside was a mess I didn't make. I came home from Riverside after a long Friday shift, smelling like garlic and tomato sauce. A thick envelope was waiting on the kitchen counter, certified mail already signed for by Michelle. Header from Idaho Central Credit Union, official seal, my name spelled exactly right. I set it on the kitchen table. stared at it before opening. Nothing good ever arrives in an envelope that requires a signature. Tore the seal. Pulled the letter out. Formal language that pretended nothing was wrong while quietly saying everything. Dear Mr. Sullivan, we are contacting you regarding recent activity on a retail credit account opened under your name and social security number. I read it once, then again slower. Store credit card. Opened 3 months ago. October 15th. My name. My social security number. My address. My phone number. My employment information at Riverside Bistro. Title years employed. Estimated annual income. Balance $3,200. Maxed out completely. Payments 60 days late. Penalties accumulating. Already in collections. But the signature... I looked at the attached copy of the application. The signature looked close. Very close. But it wasn't mine. I know my own signature the way I know my own face. This one had the right loops, the right slant, but the pressure was different, and the M was slightly too rounded. The final flourish on the N didn't quite match. Someone had practiced it. Someone with access to documents bearing my real signature, tax returns, lease agreements, insurance forms. Someone who'd studied the loops, the slant, the pressure points. The dates matched nights I worked late at the restaurant. Friday and Saturday evenings during rush when I stood over the grill for hours, phone nowhere near me. My chest tightened. Store name, Best Buy. Account opened October 15th. Right around the time Connor started asking for a little help with some expenses. Right after I'd said we needed to talk about his spending habits. Someone knew my social security number, my mother's maiden name, my date of birth. Someone had access to my papers, someone who'd been living in my house. The realization settled over me like cold water. Michelle walked into the kitchen from the bedroom, where she'd been avoiding me since this morning's argument. She saw my face and stopped in the doorway. "What's wrong?" she asked, voice full of caution. I didn't say anything, just pushed the letter across the table toward her. Michelle picked it up, skimmed it. Her face showed something I hadn't seen before, not surprise, but recognition. Her eyes moved from the letter to my face and back. She'd known, or at least she'd suspected. "What is this?" I asked, voice calm but cold. Michelle set the letter down carefully, hesitated just a fraction of a second. She was deciding how much to admit. Marcus, don't jump to conclusions. "Whose store card is this, Michelle?" She sighed like I was being unreasonable, like I was making a mountain out of a molehill. "It's nothing. Connor needed help, just something to get him through a rough patch. You used my name. Not a question, a statement of fact. You always help him anyway," she said, shoulders tensing, arms crossing. "I didn't think you'd mind. You've been paying for everything else." I stood up slowly, felt the floor beneath my feet no longer solid. Helping doesn't mean lying. Helping doesn't mean opening accounts behind my back. Helping doesn't mean forging my signature. Michelle's voice rose, panicked. "I didn't think it would be a big deal. We can pay it off. It's just one card." That word again, we. We. My voice stayed low, but somehow it landed harder than if I'd shouted. "I didn't open this account. I didn't spend $3,200 on it. I didn't forge a signature. There is no we in fraud, Michelle." She flinched at the word fraud like I'd slapped her. "Don't call it that." Connor was desperate. He needed things. He was trying to get his life together. He needed to forge my signature. He needed to steal my identity. He needed to commit a felony. He didn't steal. Michelle started, voice rising defensively. "What do you call opening credit in someone else's name without their permission?" I grabbed my keys off the counter with hands that weren't quite steady. What do you call using someone's social security number, their mother's maiden name, their employment information, without asking, "Where are you going?" Michelle's voice was small now, frightened. "The credit union, to make sure there aren't any more surprises." "Marcus, wait." I didn't wait. I walked out. I drove to Idaho Central Credit Union, hands gripping the wheel too tight. The winter sky hung low and white, pressing down on everything. Inside the branch, it smelled like carpet cleaner and printer ink. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead. A few customers stood at the teller windows. Normal Friday afternoon banking. Everyone else's life moving forward while mine felt like it was coming apart. I sat down with a credit officer named Angela Brooks and said words I never thought I'd have to say. "I need to report identity theft." Angela Brooks, senior credit officer. She had kind eyes. She'd seen this before. Angela was about my age, mid-40s, professional but kind. The nameplate on her desk read, "Senior Credit Officer, 18 years. She gestured to the chair across from her. I sat down, still holding the letter like evidence that needed protecting. "I received this yesterday." I began pushing the letter across her desk. About an account I never opened. Angela looked at it, then at me. No judgment, just careful attention. "And you didn't open this account?" "No." "I believe my stepson did, without my knowledge or permission." She nodded once. "Seen this movie before." "Let me pull up your file, Mr. Sullivan." Her fingers moved across the keyboard, efficient and quick. Then her eyebrows drew together. She clicked something, clicked again. Her expression changed concern, replacing neutrality. "Mr. Sullivan," she said carefully, turning the screen slightly so I could see. "There's more than one." My stomach dropped like an elevator with a cut cable. "More than one what?" "Accounts, opened in your name." She scrolled down. "This letter is about the first one we flagged. But when I run your social security number," she pointed at the screen, "there are 3 accounts total, all opened within 6 months. The room felt smaller. I leaned forward, needing to see it with my own eyes. "Shut 3. Angela walked me through each one with professional calm. Account 1, Best Buy store card balance $300 maxed out. Opened October 15th. Payment status 45 days late. Account 2, Home Depot store. Card balance $2,800 maxed out. Opened November 3rd. Payment status 30 days late. Account 3, Short-term installment loan online lender. Balance $5,500. Opened December 1st. Payment status current. A PR 18.99%. Total fraudulent debt $11,500. All opened within 6 months. All tied to my information, name, address, social security number, employment at Riverside Bistro. "I didn't authorize any of this," I said. My voice sounded like it came from far away. "Not one account." "I believe you, Mr. Sullivan," Angela said gently. "We see this a lot. Family situations." She paused. "They hurt worse than the numbers." She showed me copies of the applications. I stared at the signatures. They were good. Too good. The loops were right. The slant matched, even the pressure points looked practiced. Someone had spent considerable time perfecting my signature. "Whoever did this knew what they were doing," Angela said. This wasn't careless. This was calculated. I thought about Connor constantly on his phone this past week. Thought about employment verification letters these applications would need. Someone had coached Connor. Someone had taught him how to do this. But who? Angela walked me through next steps. Fraud affidavits. I signed multiple copies, credit freeze effective immediately documenting the timeline police report option she provided forms, contact information for credit bureaus. 2 hours later, I left with a thick folder of evidence, copies of everything, applications with forged signatures, account statements, timeline, affidavits, everything documented, dated, sealed. That evening, I spread every document across the kitchen table like building a case file. Letters from the credit union, copies of applications with forged signatures placed next to my real signature. Timeline showing all 3 accounts opened systematically over 6 months. Michelle stood in the doorway. She'd been out all day avoiding hiding, hoping this would somehow blow over. Now she froze, staring at the evidence laid out like a crime scene. 3 accounts, Michelle. 3. She took one step into the kitchen, hands twisting together. Marcus, I can explain. You used my name, my social security number, forged my signature, on 3 separate applications over 6 months. It's just some cards, she said, voice thin and desperate. We can pay them off. I'll get a second job. Connor can... There's that word again. I stayed seated, unusually calm. We, $11,500 in fraudulent debt. That's not just some cards. That's felony fraud. That's identity theft. Multiple crimes. Michelle's face went pale. She gripped the back of a chair. Don't use those words. You're making it sound like those are the words, Michelle. That's what the credit union calls it. That's what the legal documents say. These are crimes. She tried a different angle, voice shaking. I was protecting my son. He was in trouble. Protecting him from what? I was standing now, not angry, but resolute. Responsibility, consequences. Learning that actions have results. You don't understand. She started. I understand perfectly. My voice stayed level, sharp as a scalpel. You chose him over honesty. You chose silence over me. You did it at Olive Garden, probably longer. You watched him disrespect me without a word. Then you helped him commit fraud using my identity, my name, my credit, my trust. None of that meant anything to you. Michelle collapsed into the chair opposite me, tears starting. What are you going to do? I'm separating our finances completely. Every account. I'm freezing my credit. I'm documenting everything. I filed fraud reports today. Legal process has started. And I'm done covering for Connor. I won't let myself be used anymore. You'll humiliate us, Michelle whispered. Everyone will know. I slowly shook my head. I'm not humiliating anyone. I'm going to stop lying. I'm going to stop pretending this is okay. I'm going to stop being silent. The silence stretched. Kitchen clock ticking. Refrigerator humming. Normal sounds of life continuing while everything fell apart. Where does this leave us? Michelle finally asked, not looking at me. I don't know yet, I said honestly. But I can't be in a marriage where I'm being used, where my partner chooses fraud over honesty, where silence matters more than I do. I slept on the couch that night. Michelle went to the bedroom, the door closing with a soft click that somehow sounded like an ending. And the next afternoon, when she was at work and I was home alone with my thoughts and her tablet she'd left behind, I found something that made everything worse. Something that answered the question I'd been asking since Angela showed me those carefully practiced signatures who taught Connor to do this. Sunday afternoon. Michelle was at work. I wasn't snooping. I was sitting on the couch where I'd slept, staring into space when her tablet lit up on the coffee table. A notification preview flashed across the screen before fading, Connor, and part of a message. Exactly like we practiced. I stared at those words. Exactly like we practiced. I hesitated. This was Michelle's device, her privacy. But that phrase set off every alarm bell. Practiced, practiced what practiced forging, practiced lying. I picked up the tablet. It wasn't locked. She'd forgotten to log out this morning. Opened the Messages app with hands that weren't quite steady. Found a group chat. 3 members, Michelle Connor, and a third number saved as Scott. Scott Hendricks, ex-husband, Connor's biological father. The man Connor had compared favorably to me at Olive Garden. I scrolled back through months of messages. With each one, my blood ran colder. October 10th. Scott to Connor. Your stepdad's signature is pretty simple. 3 strokes up, 2 strokes down at the end. Practice makes perfect, kid. October 12th. Scott to Connor. Remember, he owes your mom. He owes you. You're just taking what should have been yours anyway. October 14th. Connor to Scott. Got approved for the Best Buy card, used that signature trick you showed me. They didn't even question it. October 20th. Scott to Connor. That's my boy. Now do the Home Depot one. I'm sending you the employment verification template. November 1st. Connor to Scott. The fake Riverside Bistro letter worked. They approved the Home Depot card. November 15th. Michelle to Scott. Are you sure about this? What if he finds out? November 15th. Scott to Michelle. He won't find out, and if he does, we'll deal with it. Connor needs this money. Marcus is playing house with my family. He can pay for that privilege. Besides, the guy hates conflict. He won't do anything. December 5th. Scott to Connor, one more. Personal loan. Use the same technique. You're getting really good at this. I found the employment verification letter attached as a file. Opened it. Fake Riverside Bistro letterhead. Forged signature of Marcus Sullivan, head chef. Fake HR contact information. All created by Scott, sent to Connor, used to fraudulently obtain credit. More messages. Scott coaching Connor on what to say. Next time you see him, remind him he's not your real dad. If he questions anything, bring up how he's failed as a father figure. Mention the loser thing at dinner if you can. Keep him off balance. People on the defensive don't investigate. I sat frozen tablet in my hands as the truth rearranged everything I'd thought I understood. This wasn't just a spoiled kid making bad choices. This wasn't just a mother covering blindly. This was war. A calculated, systematic attack, orchestrated by an ex-husband, using his own son as a weapon against the man who'd married his ex-wife. Scott was manipulating Connor. Michelle was going along, questioning weakly, but never stopping it. All designed to drain me financially, push me out, destroy me, maybe all 3. Connor was a victim too. Used by his own father, taught that fraud was acceptable, turned into a criminal. But that didn't erase what Connor had done. Both things were true. Connor was manipulated, and Connor made choices. I used my phone to photograph everything, screenshots of key messages, timeline of the conspiracy, employment verification letter, attachments, everything. Put the tablet back exactly where I'd found it. Over the next few days, I prepared. Built a neat evidence folder at the kitchen table late at night after Michelle had gone to bed. Worked with the precision of a chef, everything in order, no gaps left. Printed and organized credit union documents, showing 3 accounts. Signature comparisons. Bank statements showing fraud timeline. Screenshots from the Scott Connor Michelle group chat. Fake. Employment verification letter from Riverside Bistro. Timeline document showing conspiracy progression. Phone bills showing Connor's constant calls to Scott's number. Practiced in my head what I would say. Not angry speeches, not dramatic accusations, just truth, documentation, evidence. Tuesday afternoon, met George at Awaken Coffee. Showed him Scott's messages on my phone. George's face darkened as he read. Jesus, Marcus. The ex-husband is behind this. He taught his own kid to commit fraud. Connor's being used, I said quietly. Turned into a weapon. But he's 21. He made choices. Both things are true. What are you going to do? George asked carefully. I looked out the window at the Boise street people walking in winter coats. Truth needs air to breathe, and it needs witnesses. George nodded slowly, understanding. Family gathering. Michelle's told everyone I'm the problem, that I'm cruel, unreasonable, punishing Connor for no reason, that I'm tearing this family apart. I looked back at George. It's time they see the whole picture. You sure that public? I thought about sleepless nights. The humiliation at Olive Garden, months of paying for my own disrespect. The forged signatures, the systematic fraud. Michelle's silence every time it mattered. Scott's manipulation from the shadows. Silence got me here, George. Truth is the only way out. Went home. Michelle noticed my unusual calm over the following days. You've been so quiet lately, she said Wednesday evening, looking worried. Just thinking, I replied. About what? About Sunday's gathering. I'm looking forward to it. Something crossed Michelle's face, anxiety, fear, confusion. She sensed something different, but didn't know what. Didn't ask more. Maybe she didn't want to know. Saturday night, I barely slept. Not from anxiety, from clarity, from certainty, from knowing that tomorrow everything would change. Sunday morning arrived bright and clear. The kind of winter day in Boise when the sky is impossibly blue and the air so cold it burns your lungs. Perfect weather for truth. I dressed simple jeans, button-down shirt, warm jacket, grabbed my evidence folder, and drove to Julia Davis Park. Everything was about to change. Julia Davis Park sits in central Boise, a historic area near the river. When I arrived mid-afternoon, the pavilion smelled like grilling burgers and potato salad. Everything looked normal. The family gathering was in full swing by 2:30 p.m. Michelle's family had rented the large covered pavilion concrete floor. Long wooden picnic tables lined up in rows, industrial grills overlooking bare trees and the greenbelt path in the distance. About 40 people total. Michelle's sisters, Diane, Karen, Patricia, their families, cousins, aunts, and uncles on her side. A few family friends I'd met over the months. A few people from their church. Kids running around bundled in winter coats despite the unusually warm afternoon. Around 45 degrees winter sun breaking through clouds. Food was laid out potluck-style potato salad in big bowls, coleslaw baked beans, someone's famous chili in a crock pot, deviled eggs, bags of chips, cookies, and brownies, ice chests full of drinks, burgers sizzling on the grill, some uncle manning the station with practiced ease. A normal Sunday family gathering. Laughter, conversations, kids' voices, the familiar sounds of people who'd known each other for years and felt comfortable. Diane, Michelle's older sister, spotted me first as I walked up from the parking lot evidence folder tucked under my arm like I was bringing work to a casual gathering. Marcus, glad you made it. She gave me a quick hug, pulled back studying my face. Everything okay? You and Michelle? Her voice dropped to a worried whisper. We'll see, I said evenly. Diane's eyes flicked to the folder. Something for work. Just some documents. Nothing to worry about. Michelle was standing near the food table when she saw me arrive. Her face went bloodless. She knew I'd been too calm, too quiet all week. Knew something was coming, but didn't know what. She started toward me, but then stopped, hesitating. Connor was there, standing by the ice chest with Tyler Michelle's nephew phone in hand. He'd just finished a call when I walked up. I caught the tail end, Connor's voice low and tense. "Yeah, I know. He's here now." "Okay." He pocketed the phone quickly when he saw me, watched me with a wary, hostile expression. I set the folder on an empty table, didn't open it yet, got a bottle of water from the ice chest, made small talk with a few people, asked about their holidays, commented on the weather, perfectly normal. Let the gathering continue. No rush, but tension was building. People could feel it. The way Michelle kept glancing at Marcus, the way Connor's jaw stayed clenched, the way I stayed unnaturally calm, then Connor couldn't take it anymore. He walked up to me near the table, loud enough that people nearby started listening. "We need to talk." I looked straight at him, unflinching. "I agree." The crowd started paying attention, conversations dying down. Connor's voice grew louder, carrying across the pavilion, playing to an audience now. "You want to do this here? Fine. Let's do it here so everyone can hear what kind of person you really are." More people stopped talking, turned to watch. Someone's fork froze mid-bite. Kids still played in the distance, but every adult was listening now. I didn't raise my voice, didn't move aggressively, just stood there calm. "I do want to discuss this. Here. Now. With everyone present." Michelle's face went pale. She stepped forward. "Marcus, don't." Her voice pleading. But Connor cut her off, voice pitched high. "No, he wants it public. Let's make it public." Connor turned to address the gathering crowd, 40 pairs of eyes now watching. "Let me tell everyone what Marcus Sullivan really is." Connor's voice carried the tone of a performance-wounded victim, righteous anger. "This man has destroyed my life. He took back my car, the car he promised to help me with, the car in his name. He cut my phone off the family plan with no warning. He got me evicted from my apartment by removing himself from the lease. Because of him, I lost my job, couldn't get to work, couldn't take calls, couldn't do anything." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. A few sympathetic glances toward Connor. Karen, Michelle's sister, looked confused. My co-worker from Riverside, invited by Michelle, looked uncomfortable. Connor was gaining momentum, voice cracking with emotion. "I tried. I worked hard. But he just decided one day that I wasn't worth it anymore. That I didn't matter. He gave up on me. Pulled the rug out from under me with no warning, no discussion, left me with nothing." More murmurs. Some people looking at me with judgment. "How could you do that to a kid? He's only 21. He's Michelle's son." Connor was on a roll now. "And you want to know why? Because I said one thing at dinner. One comment he took wrong. And this dramatic pointing at me is his revenge. This man decided to punish me, destroy my life just because his feelings got hurt." He turned back to me, voice dripping with contempt and false righteousness. "So, yes, let's talk about it here. Let everyone know that Marcus Sullivan is the kind of person who destroys the people who need help most, who's willing to throw his stepson, air quotes, sarcastic, to the wolves." The second things get uncomfortable. Silence blanketed the pavilion. Heavy, expectant silence. The crowd watching, waiting for me to defend myself, argue back, shout, make excuses. I didn't raise my voice, didn't argue, didn't look defensive, guilty, or angry. I just calmly picked up the evidence folder from the table, opened it with steady hands. "Let's be specific," I said quietly. But my voice carried clear in that silent space. Clear, measured, a chef's precision. The pavilion went absolutely still. No one moved. just watched as I pushed the first document out onto the table where everyone standing close could see. 40 pairs of eyes fixed on one folder, and truth finally had room to breathe. I pulled documents from the folder one by one, laying them methodically on the wooden table. A chef's precision, each piece of evidence placed deliberately where the gathering crowd could see. This is the title for the 2021 Honda Civic. I held it up. My name. I pointed to the name field. I bought it. I took out the loan, my signature on the financing. I passed it around. My name clear as day. Next document, this is the insurance policy. I set it down. My name. I've been paying $185 a month for over a year to keep that car insured and legal. Next. This is the phone plan. Family account. My name. I pay $160 monthly. Connor's line is part of that plan. Next. This is the apartment lease for Connor's apartment. Rent $950 monthly. I co-signed because his credit didn't qualify. I'm listed as jointly liable, right here. I pointed to my signature, the guarantor status. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. People starting to see the names, the numbers. This wasn't what Connor had painted. I kept my voice level, emotionless. Just facts. I didn't take anything that wasn't mine. I just stopped paying for things that were never mine to carry in the first place. Connor's face flushed red. So what, you helped me? You can't just rip it all away. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't rip anything away. I gave written notice. I followed every contract. I pulled out my phone, showed screenshots. I called the insurance company, gave them exact dates. I contacted the phone provider, gave Connor the exact cutoff time. I went through proper channels with the apartment management. Everything legal. Everything with notice. I showed the texts I'd sent Connor. Timestamps, dates, clear warnings given. I stopped paying for things that weren't my responsibility. I continued calmly. Things I'd been covering out of generosity, that's all. Connor. That's a lie. You did it to hurt me. I looked at him for a long moment, then said, I did it because 3 weeks ago you sat across from me at Olive Garden and called me a loser. You said your father Scott said your mom settled when she married me. You said it loud enough for the whole restaurant to hear. Every eye in the pavilion turned to Michelle. She stood frozen near the food table. Connor turned to her, panicked. Mom! But Michelle couldn't speak. Her mouth opened. Nothing came out. It was that silence from Olive Garden. Right here, in front of 40 people. Diane, Michelle's older sister, cut in. Michelle, is that true? Connor said that. Michelle's face collapsed. Couldn't deny it. Just stood there. I kept my voice low but clear. And she said nothing. Not a word. Silence when I needed her voice most. When her son disrespected me to my face, she chose to stare at her water glass instead of speaking up. More murmurs. People glancing at each other. The story shifting. Not the cruel stepfather anymore. Something else emerging. I let that settle. Then, but that's not why everyone needs to see this. I reached deeper into the folder. The atmosphere changed. What I'm about to show you is fraud. The word fraud carried different weight. Heavier, more serious. This wasn't family squabbles anymore. I pulled out the credit union documents, held them up where the crowd could see the letterhead, the official seals. These are store credit accounts opened in my name, without my authorization, without my knowledge, without my permission. I spread them on the table. Best Buy store card, opened October 15th. Home Depot store card, Opened November 3rd. Personal loan from an online lender. Opened December 1st. Gasps from the crowd. Someone said, "Jesus Christ." I continued in that measured tone. Over $11,000 in fraudulent charges. All opened within 3 months. All using my name, my social security number, my employment information at Riverside Bistro. Connor's face went from red to ashen. You said you'd help." "I never authorized these accounts," I said firmly. I pulled out the signature comparisons. The crucial piece. 2 signatures side by side, one from my driver's license, one from the Best Buy application. I passed them around. "That's not the same handwriting." Someone in the crowd said sounded like Robert Michel's cousin. "Correct," I confirmed. "It's not. This one is forged. Someone practiced my signature. Someone with access to documents bearing my real signature. Someone in my own house." Next came the fake employment verification letter. Riverside Bistro letterhead. Forged signature purporting to be Marcus Sullivan, head chef, confirming Connor's employment. Linda Morrison was in the crowd. She owned Riverside Bistro. Her voice rang out shocked. "Tom, that's our restaurant letterhead. Is that real?" I turned to her. "No, Mrs. Morrison, it's fake. Fabricated. Used to obtain credit approval fraudulently. I never signed this. Never saw it until the bank showed me." The murmurs grew louder. People looking at Connor now with different eyes. Not a victim. A criminal. Michelle finally found her voice weak and desperate. "He's making it sound worse than it is. Connor was in trouble. He needed help." I turned to her with an expression she'd never seen. Not angry, not hurt, just done. "I'm making it sound worse. 3 felonies. That's what Idaho Central Credit Union calls it. Identity theft. Document forgery. Fraud. Those are the legal terms. That's what the police report says." Deadly silence blanketed the pavilion. Even the kids had stopped playing in the distance. Someone in the back asked, "Have you called the police?" I answered, "I filed fraud reports with my credit union. By law, they're required to forward to authorities. Investigation is ongoing." Connor stood there, pale, trembling slightly. World collapsing. The crowd's sympathy evaporated completely as they realized what they were witnessing. The silence was absolute. 40 people digesting what they'd just learned. Every eye on the documents, on Connor's pale face, on the evidence spread across the wooden table. No one knew what to say. The truth too big, too ugly to put into words right now. And then footsteps. Heavy boots on concrete. From the parking lot behind me, a voice I hadn't heard in months cut through that silence. "This is ridiculous. I appreciate you being here through this journey. Please leave a 1 in the comments to let me know you're still with me. Before we continue, parts of this story have been adapted with fictional details for storytelling impact. If you'd rather not proceed, you're welcome to close the video at any time." Connor's first words weren't anger. They were confusion. "Dad said you wouldn't care." His voice came out small, broken. He was staring at the empty space where Scott's truck had been parked, like he couldn't quite believe his father had actually driven away. Like maybe if he stared long enough, Scott would come back and explain it all away. But Scott wasn't coming back. Connor turned to me, his face pale and twisted with something between panic and dawning horror. "Dad said you were using Mom, that you didn't really love us, that we were just taking back what should have been ours anyway." I kept my voice steady, calm. "I never said any of that, Connor." "But Dad said—" Connor's voice cracked. He looked desperately at Michelle, standing frozen near the food table. "Mom, you heard him right. You heard Dad say—" Michelle couldn't look at him, just stood there with her arms wrapped around herself, tears streaming down her face. Connor's confusion shifted to something uglier. Realization. The kind that comes slow and painful, like watching a building collapse in slow motion. "You knew," Connor said, staring at his mother. "You knew what Dad was teaching me to do." Michelle's mouth opened, closed. No words came out. "Mom!" Connor's voice pitched higher, desperate now. "Say something, tell me you didn't know." But Michelle just shook her head, crying harder. Connor turned back to me. His whole body was shaking. "I didn't want to do it. Dad said it was the only way. He said..." His voice broke completely. "He said you were temporary, that you'd leave anyway, that if I didn't help him, I'd have nothing." I felt something twist in my chest. Not quite pity, not quite sympathy, just sadness. Deep, bone-tired sadness for a kid who'd been turned into a weapon by his own father. "That doesn't change what you did," I said quietly. Connor looked at the documents still spread across the picnic table. The forged signatures, the fake employment letter, the credit union statements, the text messages between him and Scott, all 47 of them, coaching him step by step through multiple felonies. His voice came out barely above a whisper. "I'm going to jail, aren't I?" "That's not up to me," I said. "That's up to the law." Robert, Michelle's cousin, stepped forward. He was a lawyer, family law, not criminal, but he knew enough to see how serious this was. "Connor, you need to get an attorney. Today. Right now. These charges are serious. Identity theft, fraud, forgery. You need legal representation immediately." Connor's face went even paler. "How serious?" "Identity theft in Idaho can carry up to 14 years, Robert said. His voice was gentle but honest. "It depends on a lot of factors. Whether you cooperate, whether there are mitigating circumstances. But yes, this is felony-level serious." Connor sank onto the bench seat, put his head in his hands. His shoulders shook with silent sobs. Michelle finally moved, took a step toward him. "Connor, baby. Don't." Connor's voice came out sharp, cutting. He looked up at her with red, swollen eyes. "You let him do this to me. You knew. You read those messages and you didn't stop it." "I thought," Michelle's voice broke. "I thought it was just one card. I thought we could fix it before." Before Marcus found out, Connor laughed harsh and bitter. That was the plan. Just keep lying. The gathering was breaking up now. People collecting their coats and dishes and children loading cars in uncomfortable silence. Nobody wanted to be there anymore. The celebration had turned into something nobody wanted to witness. Within minutes, the pavilion had emptied from 40 people to maybe 10. George Dalton walked over and put a solid hand on my shoulder. Didn't say anything. Didn't need to. Tom Morrison from Riverside Bistro was packing up the grill without a word. Diane tried to approach Michelle, but Michelle shook her head and turned away. A few family members stood in awkward clusters, talking in low voices, glancing at Connor, at Michelle, at me. Connor looked up at me one more time. "Do you hate me?" I thought about that. Really thought about it. About the months of paying his bills while he ignored me. The forged signatures practiced until they were almost perfect. The $11,500 in fraudulent debt. The loser comment at Olive Garden. Scott's calculated manipulation. Michelle's enabling silence. "No," I said finally. "I don't hate you, Connor. I'm angry. I feel betrayed. But I don't hate you." I paused. "I'm sad for you. Sad that your own father was willing to turn you into a criminal just to hurt me. Sad that you didn't see it happening. Sad that you're going to pay the price for his revenge. Connor's face crumpled completely. He broke down in ugly, wrenching sobs that shook his whole frame. The sound of someone realizing they've lost everything, their future, their family's respect, their freedom, possibly years of their life. I stood there another moment, then picked up the evidence folder from the table. Closed it carefully. Made sure every document was aligned, every page in order. The same precision I used in the kitchen. Everything in its place. I walked past Michelle without looking at her. She tried to say something, "Marcus, please," but I didn't stop. Just kept walking. My footsteps echoed on the concrete pavilion floor. Past the abandoned potato salad and deviled eggs. Past the few remaining family members standing in awkward clusters. Past Connor, still sobbing at that picnic table. I walked toward my truck in the parking lot. The winter sun was setting behind the mountains, now casting long shadows across Julia Davis Park. The Boise River flowed quiet and cold in the distance. The kind of January afternoon in Idaho where everything feels crisp and clear and brutally honest. I reached my truck and opened the door, set the folder carefully on the passenger seat. Took a deep breath of Idaho winter air, so cold it burned my lungs, so clean it hurt. Behind me I could still hear Connor crying. Could see Michelle standing alone in the pavilion, surrounded by the ruins she'd helped build. Could see George talking quietly to Tom Morrison. Could see Diane loading her car, shaking her head in disbelief at what she'd just witnessed. I climbed into the driver's seat, put my hands on the steering wheel, sat there for a moment, breathing in and out, feeling the tension in my shoulders start to release for the first time in weeks. Through the windshield, I could see the park stretching out before me, bare cottonwood trees, the pavilion in the distance, the river beyond dark and steady. Boise in winter, cold, clear, unforgiving to lies. I put the key in the ignition, but paused before turning it, gave myself one more moment. One more breath. One more second to mark the end of this chapter. To acknowledge that what had just happened in that pavilion would change all of our lives forever. Connor would face the legal system. Michelle would face the truth about her choices. Scott would keep running until he couldn't run anymore, and I would drive away from all of it lighter than I'd been in months. I turned the key. The engine rumbled to life. Then I heard footsteps running across the parking lot toward my truck. The Julia Davis Park parking lot was cold and quiet. I was almost to my truck when I heard footsteps running behind me. "Marcus, wait, please." Michelle's voice, desperate and broken. I stopped, but didn't turn around. Just stood with my hand on the truck door handle. "We need to talk," she said, breathless. I took a slow breath. "What do you want me to say, Michelle?" She came around to face me, tears streaming down her face. Mascara smudged, eyes red and swollen. "I'm sorry. For everything. For staying silent. For letting Scott manipulate Connor. For choosing him over you." I looked at her. This woman I'd thought I loved. This woman who'd stood silent while her son called me a loser, and her ex-husband coached that son to commit fraud. "You knew," I said quietly. "You knew Scott was teaching Connor to forge my signature. You saw the messages. You questioned it. What if he finds out, but you never stopped it? You chose silence." "I didn't know how bad it was," Michelle whispered. "I thought it was just one card." "One card," I repeated. "Michelle, there were 3 accounts. $11,500 in fraud. Forged signatures, fake employment letters. And you knew. You questioned it, but you didn't stop it." Michelle reached for my arm. I stepped back. "I failed you," she said. "I know that. I let my fear of conflict, my need to protect Connor. I let it all matter more than you." Yes, I said simply. You did. Can you forgive me? I looked past her toward the pavilion where Connor still sat head in his hands. I don't know. Maybe someday. But not today. What are we going to do? I don't know what you're going to do, I said. But I'm moving out. I already found a place. Small studio near the river. I signed the lease 3 days ago. Michelle's breath caught. You're leaving. I loved you, I said, voice steady. I really did. But you never chose me, Michelle. Not once when it mattered. At Olive Garden, you stayed silent. When Scott coached Connor to commit fraud, you questioned it, but didn't stop it. Every single time I needed you, you chose silence. I'll choose you now, Michelle said desperately. I'll go to therapy. I'll set boundaries with Connor. I'll do whatever it takes. I looked at her. You'll choose me now. Now that Scott's been exposed, now that Connor's facing charges, now that you have no other choice. She opened her mouth, closed it. That's not choosing me, Michelle. That's surrender. That's realizing you're out of options. There's a difference. What about Connor? She asked. The legal system will handle it. I gave them the truth. What they do with it isn't my decision. He's just a kid. He's 21, I cut her off. An adult. He made adult choices. He'll face adult consequences. Michelle was crying harder now. I don't know how to fix this. You can't, I said. Some things are just broken. Do you hate me? No, I said. I'm angry. I'm hurt. I feel betrayed. But I don't hate you. I just can't be married to you anymore. I can't be in a relationship where I'm always the one being used. Can we try to work through this? I thought about couples therapy, hard conversations, rebuilding trust. I don't think so. I think we're done, Michelle. We've been done for a while. Michelle wrapped her arms around herself, shivering. The sun was setting, casting long shadows. I'm sorry. I know, I said. But sorry doesn't undo what happened. It doesn't erase the fraud or the silence when I needed you most. Sorry is just a word. I opened my truck door, set the evidence folder on the passenger seat. If you need to reach me, call my lawyer, I said. I'll have someone contact you about the house, but I can't talk to you right now. Okay, she whispered. I climbed into my truck, started the engine, put it in reverse. Michelle stood there in the cold, watching me. She looked small, lost, broken. I felt sadness. Sadness for what could have been, for the life I'd thought we were building, for the 10 months I'd spent believing in something that was never real. I put the truck in drive and pulled out of the parking lot, drove down quiet Boise streets as the sun set, drove toward downtown, toward the studio apartment I'd rented. $675 a month. Mine. Clean. Quiet. A place where silence would be mine, not a weapon. In my rearview mirror, Michelle stood alone in that parking lot watching my truck disappear. And I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Relief. The morning after Julia Davis Park, I woke up at 6:15 a.m. with my phone ringing. Angela Brooks, Idaho Central Credit Union. I answered on the second ring. Marcus, it's Angela. Do you have a minute? I sat up in bed, already fully awake. Yeah, I have time. I need to walk you through what happens next, she said. Her voice was steady, professional, but I could hear something else underneath: concern, maybe respect. You did something incredibly difficult yesterday, and now the legal process begins. I pulled on a shirt and walked into the kitchen, pressing the phone against my ear. Okay. First, the credit union is forwarding your fraud affidavits, and all supporting documentation to the Ada County Prosecutor's Office. That includes the 3 fraudulent accounts, Best Buy Home Depot, and the online loan totaling $11,500. We're also submitting copies of the forged signatures, the fake employment verification letter from Riverside Bistro, and the screenshots of the text messages you provided. I poured myself a cup of coffee. My hands were steady. What does that mean for Connor? Angela paused. It means the prosecutor will review the evidence and decide whether to file criminal charges. Based on what you've shown me, Marcus, this isn't a gray area. Identity theft is a felony in Idaho. Forgery is a felony. If Connor is charged and convicted, he's looking at potential prison time, probation, restitution, and a permanent criminal record. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. And Scott Hendricks is a separate case, but connected. If the prosecutor can prove he coached Connor, provided the templates, and facilitated the fraud, he'll face charges as a co-conspirator, possibly wire fraud, conspiracy to commit identity theft, and interstate fraud, if any of those accounts or communications crossed state lines. I took a sip of coffee. It was too hot, but I didn't care. What about Michelle? Angela's voice softened slightly. That's complicated. Michelle didn't forge your signature. She didn't open the accounts. But if the text messages show she knew about the fraud and didn't report it, she could be named in a civil case for restitution. The prosecutor might also look at her involvement as complicity, but criminal charges are unlikely unless there's direct evidence she participated. I set the mug down on the counter, so she gets away with it. Not entirely, Angela said. Civil liability can be significant. If Connor can't pay, the restitution creditors can pursue anyone who benefited from the fraud. That includes Michelle, if she received any money, goods, or services from those accounts. I thought about the new couch Connor had bought in October, the 65-inch TV, the gaming console, all delivered to the apartment Michelle and Connor shared before he moved to Garden City. She benefited, I said quietly. Then she's not off the hook, Angela replied. Marcus, I want you to understand something. What you did yesterday, standing in front of 40 people and telling the truth, that took courage. But it also set a legal process in motion that you can't stop. Once the prosecutor's office gets involved, it's out of your hands. I leaned against the counter. I don't want to stop it. Good, because the evidence you provided is rock solid. The forged signatures, the text messages, the fake employment letter, it's all documented. You kept everything. That's rare, Marcus. Most victims of financial abuse don't have this kind of paper trail. I closed my eyes. How long does this take? The prosecutor's office will likely contact you within the next week or 2 for a formal statement. They may ask you to come and answer questions and review the evidence with them. After that, they'll decide whether to file charges. If they do, Connor will be arrested or issued a summons to appear in court. The whole process from filing charges to resolution can take 6 months to a year, depending on whether Connor pleads guilty or goes to trial. 6 months to a year. I let that sink in. What do I need to do? I asked. Keep every piece of evidence you have, Angela said. Don't delete any text messages, emails, or voicemails. Keep all your bank statements, credit card statements, and receipts. If Connor or Michelle or Scott try to contact you, document it. Don't engage, but document. Okay. And Marcus, one more thing. You'll probably get a call from a detective at the Boise Police Department. They'll want to take a formal statement and possibly open a criminal investigation separate from the credit union's fraud case. Cooperate fully. Tell them everything you told me. I nodded. I will. You did the right thing, Angela said. I know it doesn't feel that way right now, but you protected yourself. and you stopped Connor from doing this to someone else. I didn't know what to say to that, so I just said, "Thank you." "Call me if you need anything," Angela said. "I'll keep you updated as things move forward." She hung up. I stood in the kitchen holding my phone, staring at the empty countertop. 40 people had watched me speak yesterday. 40 people had seen Connor's face when I read the text messages aloud. 40 people had heard Michelle cry. And now the legal system would decide what happened next. I wasn't angry. I wasn't scared. I was just ready. Ready for the truth to have consequences. Ready for Connor to learn that actions matter. Ready for Scott to face a warrant with his name on it. Ready for Michelle to understand that silence has a price. I finished my coffee, rinsed the mug, and set it in the sink. Then I sat down at the kitchen table and started writing a timeline of everything that had happened, from the first co-signed car loan to yesterday's confrontation at Julia Davis Park. Because Angela was right. Evidence mattered. Documentation mattered. And I wasn't going to let anyone erase what they'd done. Not anymore. 2 weeks after the event at Julia Davis Park, the calls started coming in. The first was from Angela Brooks at Idaho Central Credit Union. Her voice was steady, professional. "Marcus, the investigation is complete. We've forwarded everything to the Ada County Prosecutor's Office." I sat down at my kitchen table, the Boise River visible through my window. What does that mean for Connor? He's being charged with identity theft and fraud, both felonies. Scott Hendricks is being charged as a co-conspirator, his role in coaching Connor through the forgery, the fake employment letters, all of it. The text messages you provided were crucial evidence. I closed my eyes. And Michelle. She won't face criminal charges, but she'll likely be named in any civil proceedings related to restitution. The prosecutors determined she knew about it, but didn't actively participate in the fraud itself. How's Connor handling it? He's cooperating fully. His attorney advised him to, and I think he finally understands the magnitude of what happened. He's given a full statement about Scott's involvement. The prosecutor mentioned that if Connor continues to cooperate, they might consider a plea deal, probation, restitution, community service, mandatory counseling. He's 21, Marcus. This will follow him for a long time, but it doesn't have to destroy his entire life. After Angela hung up, I sat staring at the river. 2 weeks since Julia Davis Park. 2 weeks since I'd stood in front of 40 people and laid out the truth. My phone rang again that afternoon. Michelle. I'd ignored 6 calls from her since moving out. This time I answered. Marcus. Her voice was thick with tears. Michelle. I need to talk to you. I need to explain. There's nothing left to explain. I've heard everything I need to hear. Angela called. I know what's happening with Connor. I know about Scott's charges. What else is there to say? Silence. Then, I'm filing for divorce. Okay. Okay, that's all you have to say. What do you want me to say, Michelle? That I'm surprised I moved out 2 weeks ago. I'm not coming back. So yes, okay, file for divorce. She hung up without another word. The third communication came via Angela, a handwritten letter from Connor that she'd agreed to pass along. I opened it carefully. Marcus, I don't know if you'll read this, but I needed to write it anyway. I'm sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I'm sorry. My dad told me you were using Mom, that you'd leave eventually. He told me that helping him hurt you was the only way to protect our family. And I believed him. I know now that he was using me to get back at you. I know I'm responsible for what I did, no matter who told me to do it. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just wanted you to know that I understand now. I understand what you were trying to teach me about responsibility and consequences. I'm sorry. Connor, I read the letter twice. Then I folded it carefully and put it in the file folder with all the other documents, the credit union statements, the fraud affidavits, the screenshots of the text messages. Everything documented. By the end of the second week, my life had begun to take on a new shape. At Riverside Bistro, Tom Morrison pulled me aside during prep. "Now, Marcus, Linda, and I would like to offer you the kitchen manager position. Official title, salary increase, full benefits. You've been doing the job anyway for the last year. It's time we made it official." I looked at him genuinely surprised. "I'll take the position, and thank you for believing me. Always." The new role gave me something to focus on. I started training Danny, a 19-year-old kid, who reminded me uncomfortably of Connor, eager, a little reckless, desperate to prove himself. But Danny listened. When I showed him how to break down a chicken properly, he watched carefully and asked questions. "Why do you care so much about getting it exactly right?" Danny asked one day. "Because precision matters," I told him. "In cooking and life, you can't fake your way through a proper stock. You have to do the work every single time or it falls apart." Danny nodded slowly. "Now got it, chef." Every Thursday I met George Dalton at Awaken Coffee. Same corner table, same black coffee for me. We talked about fishing the restaurant, whether Boise State had any shot next season. One Thursday, after I mentioned Connor's letter, George set down his cup and looked at me seriously. "You gave that kid something his father never did a chance to grow up. Scott would have kept using him forever. You stopped it. That's not cruelty, Marcus. That's love." I started attending Sunday services at St. Luke's, a small Episcopal church near the Greenbelt. I wasn't particularly religious, but I liked the quiet, the ritual. The priest, Father Mike, just shook my hand after each service and said, "Good to see you, Marcus." That was enough. I met my neighbors, the Johnsons, who walked their golden retriever every morning, Kayla, who worked night shifts at St. Luke's Medical Center. Normal people living normal lives, and I was becoming one of them. On Friday nights, I made fresh pasta and ate it slowly while reading. On Sundays, I experimented with new recipes. The apartment stayed quiet, in a way I'd forgotten was possible. No accusations waiting when I came home. Just me, the river, the cottonwood trees, and the slow, steady work of rebuilding. By the end of the second week, I realized something. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was living again. And somehow that felt like enough. 3 weeks in, I started to understand what had really happened. Not the surface facts, I'd known those since Julia Davis Park. The forged signatures, the fake employment letters, the $11,500 in fraudulent debt spread across 3 accounts. The 47 text messages coaching Connor through each step. I documented all of that, presented it to 40 witnesses, filed the reports with Angela Brooks at Idaho Central Credit Union and the Boise Police Department. But understanding the mechanics of fraud isn't the same as understanding the people behind it. That took longer. That took distance. That took 3 weeks of silence and coffee by the Boise River, watching the cottonwood trees start to bud while I worked through what I'd been too close to see clearly before. Scott Hendricks wasn't just an absent father. He was an architect of destruction. I'd thought at first that Scott was merely negligent, a divorced dad who'd checked out of Connor's life and only showed up when convenient. But the text messages told a different story. Scott hadn't abandoned Connor. He'd weaponized him. Every message was calculated. Your stepdad's signature is pretty simple. 3 strokes up, 2 strokes down at the end. Practice makes perfect, kid. That wasn't casual advice. That was instruction. Remember, he owes your mom. He owes you. That wasn't encouragement. That was manipulation, planting the seed that I deserved what was coming. Scott had been planning this for months, maybe longer. He'd waited until Connor was old enough to open credit accounts, old enough to be criminally responsible, and then he'd turned his own son into a weapon aimed directly at me. Not because Connor needed money. Not because Connor asked for help. Because Scott wanted revenge for something I'd never fully understand. Maybe the fact that Michelle had moved on. Maybe the fact that I'd been a better father figure in 10 months than he'd been in 21 years. I remembered Scott's words at Julia Davis Park. "You're destroying my son over some paperwork." I know Scott. "You destroyed him long before I ever met him." Angela had called me a week ago with additional information. Scott Hendricks had priors 2 fraud convictions in Oregon and Nevada, both from years ago. He'd served 18 months in Oregon, paid restitution in Nevada, and apparently learned nothing except how to coach someone else to do the crime for him next time. There was an active warrant out for him now in Idaho. Angela said the Ada County Sheriff's Office had tracked him to a motel in Nampa, but by the time they arrived, he'd already left. Last anyone heard, he might have crossed into Nevada again. Scott would spend the rest of his life running. That was his prison. He'd built it himself, one lie at a time, and now he was locked inside it forever. I didn't feel angry about that anymore. I just felt sad. Sad for Connor, mostly, who'd spent 21 years believing his father loved him, only to discover he'd been nothing more than a tool. Then there was Michelle. Understanding Scott was easier than understanding Michelle because Scott's motives were obvious: revenge, cowardice, selfishness. Michelle's were more complicated, or at least I'd told myself they were. But after 3 weeks of clarity, I realized they weren't complicated at all. They were just ugly. Michelle had known about the text messages. She'd been part of the group chat. Her name was right there in the screenshots. She'd seen Scott coaching Connor through identity theft. She'd seen the fake employment letters being drafted. And on November 15th, when she texted Scott asking, "Are you sure about this? What if he finds out?" She hadn't been asking out of concern for me. She'd been asking out of fear of getting caught. At Julia Davis Park, Michelle had said, "He's my son." As if that explained everything. As if being Connor's mother gave her permission to enable fraud to stay silent, while I was being robbed to choose loyalty to a 21-year-old criminal over honesty with the man she'd married. I'd been her husband. But apparently that didn't matter. Now with distance, I understood Michelle hadn't married me for love. She'd married me for stability. I was the head chef at Riverside Bistro, with a steady income, a reliable truck, a clean credit history. I was the guy who'd co-sign a car loan for her son, add him to my phone plan, agree to a lease that included him. I was useful. I was convenient. I was safe. But I was never her partner. I thought back to the small moments I'd ignored. Michelle had never asked about my day at work, not really. She'd ask if I was tired, if dinner was ready, but never what I'd cooked, or if Tom Morrison had any interesting customers. She'd never made dinner for me, always expected me to cook when I got home from a 10-hour shift. She'd never defended me when Connor was disrespectful, never set boundaries, never said, "That's not how we talk to Marcus in this house." I'd mistaken her silence for peace. But silence wasn't peace. Silence was just absence. An empty space where partnership should have been. At Olive Garden, when Connor had called me a loser and Michelle had said nothing, I'd thought she was conflict-averse. Now I knew better. She wasn't avoiding conflict. She was choosing a side, and it wasn't mine. Michelle would have to live with her choices now. The divorce she'd filed, the civil liability she faced for restitution, the knowledge that she'd enabled her son's criminal behavior and watched her marriage collapse because she couldn't find the courage to tell the truth. I didn't feel bitter about it anymore. I just felt clear. I'd given her 10 months. She'd given me nothing in return except excuses, silence, and betrayal. Understanding doesn't mean forgiving. It just means I could finally see what had always been there. And that was enough to let it all go. 1 month after the event at Julia Davis Park, I stopped counting the days. Not because the pain had disappeared or because I'd forgotten what happened, but because my life had started moving forward again, and tracking time since the confrontation felt like staying tethered to something I needed to leave behind. I wasn't defined by what Scott and Connor and Michelle had done anymore. I was defined by what I was building now. My daily routine had become something I actually looked forward to. 6 in the morning, I'd wake up without an alarm, just natural light coming through the east-facing window of my studio apartment. I'd make coffee in the small French press I'd picked up at a thrift store, pour it into the mug George had given me as a housewarming gift, and sit by the window watching the Boise River wake up. Runners on the greenbelt, cyclists heading to work. The cottonwood trees fully green now swaying in the early June breeze. 9 to 6 Monday through Friday, I worked at Riverside Bistro. As kitchen manager now, I had more responsibility, but also more control. I set the prep schedule, trained. The new hires made sure every plate that left the kitchen met my standards. Danny had turned into a solid line cook, precise, respectful, eager to learn. Tom Morrison told me last week that revenues were up 15% since I'd taken over the kitchen full-time. Evenings I cooked for myself, not just quick meals thrown together after a long shift, but actual cooking. I'd make risotto or braised short ribs or homemade gnocchi, taking my time enjoying the process. Then I'd eat slowly, read a book from the library, and sometimes take a walk along the river as the sun set behind the mountains. Weekends were for the farmers market downtown, where I'd buy fresh vegetables and talk to the vendors about growing seasons and heirloom varieties. I'd prep meals for the week, organize my small space, and enjoy the solitude. I didn't have any desire to date, not yet, maybe not ever. I was learning how to be alone without being lonely, and that felt like a skill worth mastering. My finances had stabilized. My monthly expenses ran about $1,200 rent, utilities, groceries, gas for the truck. I was rebuilding my savings slowly but surely, putting away $400 to $500 each month. I'd paid off the remaining balance on Connor's Honda Civic loan. The bank had repossessed the car when Connor couldn't make payments, and I'd settled the deficiency balance just to close that chapter. I'd canceled the storage unit rental. Turned out I didn't have anything stored there anyway. It had been one more thing Michelle had insisted we needed that we never actually used. My credit score was recovering. The fraudulent accounts had been removed from my report after Angela Brooks provided the documentation to all 3 credit bureaus. The $11,500 in debt that had appeared overnight was gone, erased, like it had never existed. Except it had existed, and I had the file folder full of evidence to prove it. But mostly I just felt lighter. I wasn't carrying the weight of anyone else's choices anymore. Not Michelle's silence, not Connor's crimes, not Scott's manipulation. Just my own life, my own decisions, my own future. I'd reconnected with old friends I'd lost touch with during the 10 months with Michelle. Had lunch with a former co-worker from 15 years ago, who'd moved to Meridian and opened his own catering business. Called my sister in Portland. For the first time in 3 years, we'd drifted apart after our parents died. But hearing her voice reminded me that family didn't have to be the people who hurt you. Sometimes family was the people who showed up when you needed them. I'd lost myself trying to save people who didn't want to be saved. Now I was finding myself again, and that person was someone I actually liked. The lessons I'd learned weren't complicated, but they'd been hard-won. Lesson 1. Silence isn't peace. It's avoidance. I'd kept silent at Olive Garden when Connor called me a loser because I thought that was what love looked like, absorbing the disrespect, keeping the peace, not making waves. But love doesn't require you to disappear. Love doesn't demand you accept abuse with a smile. Real love would have meant Michelle stepping in and saying, "That's not how we talk to people in this family." Real love would have meant Connor apologizing on his own. Silence wasn't protecting anything. It was just letting the poison spread. Lesson 2. Boundaries aren't cruelty. They're honesty. I didn't destroy Connor by cutting off his car insurance and phone plan and refusing to cover for him anymore. I stopped enabling him. There's a difference. Enabling is pretending the problem doesn't exist. Boundaries are saying, I see the problem and I'm not going to participate in it anymore. Connor had a choice at every step: forge the signatures, or don't open the fraudulent accounts, or don't listen to his father's manipulation, or don't. He made his choices. I just stopped shielding him from the consequences. Lesson 3. You can't save someone who's being used as a weapon against you. Connor wasn't a victim who needed rescuing. He was Scott's weapon, aimed directly at me. And Michelle had loaded the gun by staying silent, by enabling the fraud, by choosing Connor's immediate comfort over long-term accountability. I couldn't save Connor from Scott because Michelle wouldn't let me. She'd already chosen her side. Lesson 4. Financial abuse is real, and it's more common than people think. People think abuse is always screaming or hitting, but sometimes it's a storage unit you never asked for at $95 a month. Sometimes it's a car loan in your name for someone else's vehicle. Sometimes it's a phone plan you're paying for while the other person racks up international charges. Sometimes it's someone forging your signature on credit applications because they know you're too kind, too trusting, too afraid of conflict to say no. I thought about people out there in similar situations. How many were paying for someone else's choices right now? How many were staying silent because they thought that's what love required? How many were looking at their bank statements wondering how it all went wrong? If you're reading this and you see yourself in my story, I want you to know it's never too late to stop. It's never too late to set boundaries. It's never too late to say, this isn't okay anymore. Maybe you're in Fort Wayne or Spokane or Richmond. Maybe you're paying car insurance for someone who disrespects you. Maybe your name is on a lease you never agreed to. Maybe you're the one making dinner every night while everyone else just expects it. Maybe you're the one absorbing the cruelty because you think keeping the peace is the same as being loved. You deserve better, and it's okay to say so. I'm not a hero. I'm just a man who decided I was worth protecting. And if that's all I accomplish, it's enough. There's a question I've been asked a few times since the event at Julia Davis Park. Do you regret it? No, I don't regret it. Regret would mean I thought I'd done something wrong. I didn't do anything wrong. I told the truth. I documented fraud. I protected myself from people who were actively hurting me. There's nothing to regret in that. What I do regret is not acting sooner. I regret the 10 months I spent thinking that love meant sacrifice without reciprocity. I regret every time I stayed silent when Connor was disrespectful, every time I made excuses for Michelle's complicity, every time I told myself that keeping the peace was more important than protecting myself. I regret believing that being kind meant being a doormat, that being patient meant having no boundaries, that being loving meant accepting abuse. Let me break down the real cost of my silence because numbers tell a story that feelings sometimes obscure. Financial cost $11,500 in fraudulent debt across 3 credit accounts. Another $16,500 in support over 10 months. Car payments, insurance, phone plan, storage unit, groceries, utilities, rent contributions. Total roughly $28,000. And that's not counting the emotional labor, the stress, the sleepless nights, wondering why my credit score had dropped, or why Michelle seemed distant, or why Connor treated me with such contempt. But the real cost wasn't the money. The real cost was the piece of myself I gave away every time I stayed silent. Every time I absorbed disrespect and pretended it was fine. Every time I paid a bill that wasn't mine and told myself it was what family did. Every time I looked the other way when something didn't add up because I didn't want to cause conflict. That cost incalculable. Some people have told me I was too harsh on Connor, that he's just a kid, that he made a mistake, that I should have handled it privately instead of exposing him in front of 40 people at Julia Davis Park. Here's my response. Harsh would have been letting it continue. Harsh would have been pretending everything was fine while my credit was destroyed, my savings were drained, and my name was used to commit felonies. Harsh would have been enabling Connor to believe that fraud has no consequences, that manipulation works, that he could lie and steal and forge signatures without anyone holding him accountable. I didn't take anything away from Connor. I stopped giving him things that were never mine to give in the first place. His car, I co-signed the loan, but it was his responsibility. His phone plan. I added him out of generosity, not obligation. His apartment, I agreed to the lease to help him, not because I owed him anything. When I removed my support, I wasn't punishing him. I was returning us to the truth. He was an adult, responsible for his own choices, and I was a man who didn't have to subsidize someone else's criminal behavior. People talk about family like it's a magic word that erases accountability. Like blood or marriage creates an obligation to accept mistreatment. But family isn't defined by who uses you. It's defined by who respects you. Connor was never my son. He was Michelle's son, and I tried to be a positive influence in his life. But he made it clear through words, actions, and forged signatures that he didn't want a father figure. He wanted a bank account with legs. And Michelle was never my partner. She was someone who needed financial stability, and I provided it. But partnership requires honesty, mutual respect, and shared responsibility. We never had that. I just didn't want to admit it. Let me tell you what boundaries really mean, because I think people misunderstand them. Boundaries aren't walls. They're doors with locks. You decide who gets a key, and you can change the locks anytime you need to. A boundary isn't cruel. It's a statement of value. It says I matter too. It says my well-being is as important as yours. It says, I will not participate in my own destruction just to keep you comfortable. People will call you selfish when you set boundaries. Let them. The people who benefit from your silence will always tell you that speaking up is wrong. They'll say you're breaking up the family. They'll say you're being unreasonable. They'll say you're overreacting. But here's the truth, you're not destroying the family by protecting yourself. The family was already broken. You're just refusing to pretend otherwise. I was terrified to set boundaries with Michelle and Connor. I thought it would make me the bad guy. I thought people would judge me, and you know what? Some people did judge me. Some people at that park thought I was cruel for publicly exposing Connor. Some people thought I should have handled it privately, quietly, without making a scene. But those people weren't paying Connor's bills. Those people weren't the ones whose signatures were being forged. Those people weren't waking up at 3 a.m, wondering if their entire financial life was going to collapse because someone they trusted had weaponized their kindness, so their opinions, while noted, didn't carry much weight. Let me address another myth: unconditional love. Love should be unconditional. Support shouldn't be. I loved Connor. I wanted him to succeed. But that didn't mean I had to fund his fraudulent lifestyle or enable his father's manipulation. I could love him and still refuse to be his victim. I loved Michelle. I wanted our marriage to work. But that didn't mean I had to accept her betrayal or her silence when she knew I was being defrauded. I could love her and still protect myself from her complicity. Unconditional love doesn't mean unconditional tolerance. It doesn't mean you set yourself on fire to keep someone else warm. It doesn't mean you sacrifice your well-being, your finances, your mental health, or your self-respect because someone else demands it. For 54 years, I thought being kind meant being easy. It doesn't. You can be kind and still have limits. You can be generous and still know how to say no. You can be loving and still refuse to be used. Your value isn't measured by how much you endure. It's measured by how much you respect yourself. If you're in a situation like mine, I want you to hear this. You are not responsible for other people's choices. You didn't make them forge signatures or manipulate or stay silent. They made those choices. The consequences belong to them, not you. You are not required to set yourself on fire to keep others warm. If someone's comfort depends on your suffering, that's not love. That's exploitation. And you are not cruel for refusing to be used. Protecting yourself isn't selfishness. It's survival. Check your credit report. Ask questions about bills in your name. Look at bank statements. Read contracts before you sign them. And if something feels wrong, trust that instinct. You deserve honesty. You deserve respect. You deserve a life where your kindness isn't mistaken for weakness and your generosity isn't treated as obligation. I'm still Marcus Sullivan. I'm still a chef. I'm still learning. But now I'm learning to value myself the way I value a good recipe, with precision, dedication, and respect. And that's made all the difference. It's been 6 weeks since the event at Julia Davis Park, and I'm writing this for you. Not for me. I've already lived through it. I've already learned the lessons made, the hard choices, walked away from people I thought I'd spend my life with. I'm sitting here in my studio apartment overlooking the Boise River with a cup of black coffee watching the June morning come alive, and I want to tell you where everyone ended up. Because endings matter. Because consequences matter. Because the truth doesn't stop at exposure, it follows through to resolution. Connor Hendricks pleaded guilty to identity theft, a felony. He was sentenced to 18 months probation, mandatory restitution, and 200 hours of community service. He's working at a warehouse in Nampa, now living in a shared apartment with 2 roommates, paying me back in monthly installments of $150. It'll take him years to repay the $11,500 he stole, and honestly, I don't know if he'll ever finish. But I accepted the repayment plan anyway, not because I need the money, because he needs to be responsible. He needs to understand that actions have consequences, that fraud isn't a shortcut, that the signature he forged belonged to a real person with a real life that he damaged. We don't talk. He sends the payments through a third-party payment app with no messages attached. That's fine. I don't need his apologies or explanations anymore. I just need him to keep his word month after month, payment after payment. That's accountability. Scott Hendricks is still running. There's an active warrant out for him in Idaho, and Oregon has issued one too, based on prior violations. If he's caught, he'll likely face federal charges for crossing state lines to avoid prosecution. Angela Brooks told me last week that the FBI has him on a watch list now. He tried to use a credit card in Reno 2 weeks ago, and the transaction was flagged, but by the time local police arrived, he was gone. Scott will run until he can't run anymore. That's his choice. That's his prison. He built it himself, one manipulation at a time, and now he's locked inside it forever. Michelle and I finalized our divorce 5 weeks ago. No contest, clean split. She moved to Spokane to live with her sister Diane. She's working as a receptionist at a dental office, and as far as I know, she's not in contact with Connor or Scott. I don't hate her. I don't think about her much at all, if I'm being honest. She made her choices. I made mine. We're both living with the outcomes. That's how it works. George Dalton still meets me for coffee every Thursday morning at Awaken Coffee. Same corner table, same terrible caramel macchiato for him, same black coffee for me. Last week, he told me something I've been thinking about ever since. You gave everyone exactly what they deserved. Connor got accountability. Scott got exposure. Michelle got honesty. And you got yourself back. That's justice, Marcus. Real justice. I think he's right. Angela Brooks at Idaho Central Credit Union closed the fraud investigation officially last month. My credit report is clean, the fraudulent accounts are removed, and my score has climbed back to where it was before this all started. I sent her a thank you card. She sent back a note that said, "You did the hard thing. That matters." It does matter. It mattered then, and it matters now. At Riverside Bistro, I'm thriving. Tom Morrison gave me a raise last week unprompted. 15% increase plus a year-end bonus structure. He said the kitchen has never run smoother, revenue is up, and customer reviews specifically mention the quality of the food. I'm teaching Danny and 2 other young cooks how to build foundations, how to respect ingredients, how to take pride in precision. It feels good. It feels like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Now, if you've read this far, I want you to ask yourself a question. Who in your life is benefiting from your silence? Is it a partner who dismisses you? A child who disrespects you? A family member who uses you? A friend who takes but never gives? Whoever it is, you don't owe them your dignity. You don't owe them your peace. You don't owe them permission to destroy your life while you stand by and watch. Let me give you the signs of financial abuse because most people don't realize they're experiencing it until it's too late. Someone is using your name without permission, opening accounts, co-signing loans, putting bills in your name. Someone expects you to pay for things without contributing themselves. Someone makes you feel guilty when you ask questions about money. Someone tells you that setting limits is selfish, that asking for transparency is controlling, that protecting yourself is cruel. If you see these signs, you're not imagining it. It's real, and it's not okay. Here are the first practical steps. Step 1, document everything. Save receipts, text messages, emails, bank statements. Create a folder, physical or digital, and keep it somewhere safe. Step 2, talk to someone you trust. A friend, a mentor, a counselor. Don't carry this alone. Step 3, set one small boundary and hold it. Just one. Maybe it's saying no to a request for money. Maybe it's asking to see paperwork before you sign. Maybe it's checking your credit report. Start small, but start. Step 4, prepare for pushback. It will come. The people benefiting from your silence will call you selfish, unreasonable, cruel. Let them. Their discomfort is not your responsibility. Step 5, remember that your value is not up for negotiation. You matter. Your well-being matters. Your financial security matters. You don't have to earn the right to protect yourself. I'm not telling you to blow up your life. I'm telling you that you deserve respect. And if someone can't give you that, you're not required to stay. 6 weeks ago, I stood in a park and told the truth. It cost me a marriage, a stepson, and 10 months of my life. But it gave me back something more valuable, myself. My name, my credit, my peace. My ability to wake up in the morning without dread to go to work, without shame to look in the mirror and recognize the man looking back. If my story helps even one person find their voice, then every dollar, every sleepless night, every moment of doubt was worth it. You're not alone. You're not wrong. And it's not too late for you. If this story resonates with you, share it. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. Share it with someone who's been silent too long. And if that person is you, then hear me now. It's time to speak up. I'm a chef, a man, and someone who finally learned that the most important thing you can cook is your own life with dedication, precision, and respect. Looking back at my story, I see a man who stayed silent too long, who mistook patience for love and enabling for kindness. If there's one thing I'd tell you, it's this: don't be like I was. Don't wait 10 months to protect yourself. Don't ignore the red flags because you're afraid of conflict. Don't sacrifice your dignity on the altar of keeping peace. God gave us voices for a reason. He gave us the wisdom to recognize harm and the strength to walk away from it. 3 times in Scripture we're reminded that truth sets us free and that freedom cost me everything before it gave me back myself. I prayed for guidance when I felt lost, and God answered not with easy solutions, but with the courage to face hard truths. When I finally spoke up at Julia Davis Park, I wasn't acting alone. I was leaning on a faith that says your worth is not negotiable, that you are fearfully and wonderfully made, and that no one, not family, not spouse, not stepchild, has the right to diminish that. This husband revenge story isn't about vengeance. It's about accountability. This drama family saga isn't entertainment. It's a warning. Husband revenge served cold is just truth served late. Drama family dynamics will destroy you if you let silence be your only response. And another drama family will face the same cycle unless someone breaks it. The lesson: financial abuse is real. Manipulation hides behind family. And speaking up isn't cruelty, it's survival. The final husband revenge was simply refusing to be a victim anymore. Thank you for walking this journey with me. If this story resonated with you, drop a comment below and let me know your thoughts. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe for more real stories that cut through the noise with honesty and heart. Your voice matters, use it.